you do when you have a question that you don't know the answer to? If it's a question like, what are we having for dinner tonight? You might ask your parents. If it's a question about dinosaurs, you might ask your science teacher. But what if they don't know the answer? You guys might Google it or look it up in a book in the library together, but some questions aren't easily answered for us. However, there are ways we can start to figure out the answer for ourselves. Like, what is the best type of jelly? You like strawberry, but every time you ask a different person, they have a different answer. One way to answer this question and questions like this is to do an experiment. We had a question about trees in our area, so we conducted an experiment. If you go outside right now and look around you, what do you see? If you see a lot of green grass, plants, but maybe only 1 or 2 buildings, then you might live in a rural area. If you go outside and see a lot of buildings, some roads with many cars, and maybe a little bit of grass, then you might live in an urban area. Urban areas, like the neighborhood you might live in, didn't always exist. Before humans were there, the earth was covered in grass and plants grew everywhere. But when humans moved in, they started covering the land in buildings to live in and placing down surfaces to walk and later drive on. We call those impervious surfaces. Some examples are sidewalks, parking lots, even the roof of your house. If you are unsure about whether or not where you are standing is called an impervious surface, try to imagine dropping a huge bucket of water on the ground. Does the water disappear into the ground, or can you see the water stay on top of the ground in a puddle or start to slide away from you? If the water can be absorbed into the ground, then it is not an impervious surface. If you see a lot of impervious surfaces in one area, then you can probably assume there has been some form of urbanization. During urbanization, when people build things and install more impervious surfaces, they often remove previously planted trees. Often those trees were considered native to the area. Native here means that the plants grew before human intervention. People then plant non-native trees, trees that without humans would not have been found in the area. Have you ever seen these? They are the seeds of this tree. Some call it the Norway maple. Do you think this tree is native or non-native to the United States? Good, it's non-native. One of the problems with this is that when people plant a lot of non-native trees in one area, it can create a competitive environment. It's like if you invited your entire class over for dinner, but didn't tell your parents they were coming, so they only prepared enough food for your family. There might not be enough food for everyone. Trees have to share resources like you might have to share your food, but often non-native trees are better at gathering resources, putting the native trees in danger. The question we wanted to answer with our study is the amount of impervious surface in an area related to the number of native and non-native tree species. We are looking to see if there's a correlation between the impervious surface and the amount of native trees. A correlation looks at the relationship between two things that we call variables. For example, as people get taller, they tend to weigh more. This is a positive correlation because both variables are increasing. There can also be no correlation, like there is no relationship between the amount of ice cream you eat and how many siblings you have. But back to the trees. Does anyone have a guess on the correlation between impervious surface and native trees? Well, we did. This is called the prediction. We predicted that as the amount of impervious surface grows, the amount of native trees shrink. To test this, we found an urban area near us. In this case, it was our college campus, and measured out a plot of land. We then calculated how much of that land was made up of impervious surface. Within that plot of land, we took down all types of information about the trees, their height, the size of the trunk, and what kind of trees they were. There were 4 trees in our plot, but only 2 kinds. One was native, and the other was non-native. But one plot of land alone is not the best evidence to show a relationship, so we had all of our friends do it too, and then we shared the information with each other. We classified each tree as either native or non-native to their specific area, and then we created a graph to show that relationship. If you remember earlier, we talked about correlation. Here are 3 graphs that show the different relationships between 2 variables. What does our graph look like? A positive, a negative, or no correlation? If you answered negative, you would be right. This means that our prediction was correct, because as the amount of impervious surface increased on the bottom, the amount of native trees decreased. You can see our line goes down. If you guessed no correlation, that's okay. We found a weak correlation, so the graph can actually resemble a relationship that has no correlation too. This just means we need more data to show whether there is a strong or weak relationship between the 2 variables. Good job today, everyone. Do you have any questions that you would like to solve with an experiment? How would you do it?